Giselle Hartman stepped out of her white Porsche, glanced at the rusted red truck parked at the end of the row, and laughed, not a quiet laugh, not a polite one, but the kind that carries across a parking lot and lands on every person standing within 20 feet. "Who left that wreck out here?" she said, loud enough for the 3 clients walking beside her to hear clearly. "I thought this was a parking lot, not a junkyard." The man standing next to the truck didn't flinch. He closed the door slowly, tucked a rolled set of blueprints under his arm, and looked at her with the calm of someone who had decided, a long time ago, not to waste anger on people who hadn't earned a reaction. His name was Dominic Hale, and the truck she was laughing at was the most valuable thing in that parking lot, including her car. She just didn't know it yet. 3 days later, a man drove up from Nashville, lifted the hood, read the engine number against a handwritten note in his shirt pocket, and said quietly, "I've been looking for this one for 22 years. Then he wrote a check for $80,000. What Giselle Hartman didn't know about that truck will change everything you think you know about what it means to hold on to something and when to finally let go. The alarm on Dominic's phone went off at 6:47 in the morning, same as every day. He silenced it before it could ring twice, already halfway out of bed. In the kitchen, the coffee maker clicked on automatically, a small luxury he'd allowed himself after 2 years of remembering to press the button by hand. He could hear Noah in the back bedroom, the soft shuffling of small feet finding slippers, the low thump of a backpack hitting the floor. 7 years old and still not able to pack a bag the night before, no matter how many times they talked about it. Dominic set a piece of bread in the toaster and leaned against the counter. Through the window above the sink, he could see the truck parked in the driveway, the early light catching the oxidized red paint in a way that almost made it glow. He'd been looking at that truck from this exact window for 3 years now, ever since he moved back into his father's house after the funeral. Before that, he'd looked at it from this same window as a child, watching his father circle it on Sunday mornings with a chamois cloth and a bottle of spray wax, working in slow, deliberate strokes like a man with nowhere better to be. Noah appeared in the doorway, backpack half-zipped, wearing one shoe. "Dad," he said, "is our truck old?" Dominic turned and looked at his son. "Our truck has history," he said. Noah considered this the way 7-year-olds consider things, tilting his head to one side, deciding whether the answer was satisfying enough to stop asking. Apparently it was. He sat at the table and pulled his plate closer. Today was not an ordinary day. Dominic had been working toward this appointment for 3 weeks. Hartman Realty Group was renovating their new office building downtown. A full interior overhaul, custom millwork, built-in shelving throughout 3 floors, a lobby feature wall, the kind of job that could carry a small operation through most of a calendar year without scrambling for the next contract. His portfolio was solid. His bid was clean. He'd been over the drawings 4 times. He set Noah's toast on the table, poured 2 glasses of orange juice, and went to the bedroom to change into the cleanest work shirt he owned. Not a dress shirt, he wasn't going to pretend to be something he wasn't, but a pressed button-down, dark blue, no stains, no fraying at the collar. He rolled the blueprints into their tube, checked the latch twice, and carried them to the kitchen. "You're dressed fancy," Noah said. "It's a meeting. Will they say yes?" Dominic picked up his son's juice glass and moved it away from the edge of the table. "Maybe," he said. "But either way, we're good." At 7:38, he dropped Noah at the school gate. Noah waved from the sidewalk, both arms, like he was flagging down a plane. "Do good, Dad," he called. Dominic raised 2 fingers off the steering wheel in acknowledgement, waited until Noah disappeared through the gate, and then pulled back into traffic. He didn't know, driving downtown that morning with his blueprints in the passenger seat and his coffee in the cup holder, that this day would stay with him for the rest of his life. But not for the reason he was hoping. The truck that Dominic drove to that appointment was a 1967 Ford F-100 custom cab, and it had been in his family for 56 years, without a single significant modification. His grandfather bought it new at a dealership in Memphis in the spring of 1967. He paid cash, counted out the bills at the salesman's desk, and drove home with 2 of his kids riding in the truck bed, their arms thrown over the side, watching the road unspool behind them. The truck was red then, the kind of red that looks like it means something, and the chrome on the grille caught light like a mirror. His father took ownership in 1991, when the grandfather's hands had gotten too stiff for long drives. By then, the paint had mellowed, and the chrome had developed its first ghost of oxidation, but the engine had never been rebuilt. The cab had never been reupholstered, and not a single bolt had been changed that didn't need changing. His father believed that originality was its own form of integrity. "A truck that's been painted over isn't the same truck anymore," he used to say, working the chamois in slow circles. "You can cover something up, but you can't make it what it was." When his father died, Dominic found a small envelope in the kitchen drawer. His name written on the front in his father's careful block letters. Inside was a folded piece of paper with 5 words. "Don't sell it. Not yet." Dominic had read that note 100 times. He understood the first part. He was never sure about the second. What he did know, because his father had told him once in a rare moment of straightforwardness, was that the truck was what collectors called a matching numbers vehicle, meaning the engine, transmission, and chassis all carried their original factory stampings, never swapped, never replaced. He knew the body had never been resprayed. He knew the interior was unmolested. The steering wheel still wore its factory covering. The dashboard gauges still had their original faces. The radio knob still bore the faint outline of a factory sticker. No one had ever peeled away. He knew these things. He had simply never needed to do anything with the knowledge. Every Sunday he washed it, the same way his father had, the same way his grandfather probably had before that. Not to show it off, not to prepare it for anything, just because it was the one ritual that made him feel like those 2 men were still somewhere close by. He didn't need anyone to understand that. Until the morning, someone laughed. The parking lot at Hartman Realty Group's office building was the kind that had been recently resurfaced. The lines freshly painted in bright yellow, the spaces numbered with small metal placards. A row of company vehicles occupied the first 6 spots nearest the entrance: 2 black SUVs, a silver Tesla, a Range Rover with tinted windows, a white Porsche Cayenne. Dominic pulled the phone 100 into the last open space at the far end of the row and cut the engine. It was 9:52, 8 minutes early. He was reaching across to the passenger seat for his blueprint tube when he heard the click of heels on pavement fast, confident. The walk of someone who owns the building they're walking toward. He glanced up through the windshield. Giselle Hartman was 29 years old. And she moved through the world with the assurance of someone who had never been given a reason to slow down. She'd stepped into the CEO role at her father's company 3 years ago and had spent those 3 years proving she could do more than hold the seat. Smart, exacting, fluent in the language of deals and leverage, she had earned most of what people said about her. The rest she'd inherited, and she'd never spent much time distinguishing between the two. She was walking with 3 men, potential partners or investors, judging by the way they were listening to her when she passed the end of the row and the phone 100 came into her line of sight. She stopped, looked at it, and laughed. It wasn't a momentary reaction. It lasted long enough for the 3 men beside her to turn and look, long enough for one of them to smile, long enough for another to pull out his phone and take a picture as if the truck were a curiosity worth documenting. "Who parked that here?" she said. "I thought this was a parking lot, not a salvage yard." Marcus Bell was standing near the building entrance, waiting for Dominic, and he went very still. Dominic climbed out of the truck. He didn't rush. He pulled the blueprint tube from the seat, tucked it under his arm, and closed the door. Then he looked across the lot at Giselle Hartman and said, in a voice that carried without being raised, "Dominic Hale, I have a 10 o'clock with your design office." For one moment, something shifted behind her expression, not quite embarrassment, not quite recognition, but something that came close to both. She recovered quickly. "Come in," she said, and turned toward the building without looking back. One of the 3 men did not follow her immediately. He was older, somewhere in his late 50s, with white hair and a tan corduroy jacket, and he had the unhurried manner of someone who moved at his own speed regardless of the situation. He stopped a few feet from the truck's front end and looked at it. Not the way you look at something surprising, the way you look at something you recognize. He crouched slightly, peered at the gap beneath the fender, then straightened and followed the others inside. Nobody noticed him do it. Dominic noticed. But he didn't know the man's name. And in that moment, he had other things on his mind. The conference room on the 3rd floor was glass on 2 sides, which meant that everyone who passed in the hallway could see the meeting in progress. Dominic unrolled his drawings on the long table and began. Giselle sat at the head of the table. She had a folder open in front of her, and she was looking at it rather than at him for the first part of the presentation. Two members of her development team sat to her left, a facilities manager to her right. No one offered coffee. Dominic